Having the right TMS is vital in supporting freight broker growth. Partner with TIE Software to optimize your processes and compete with confidence. Get into the automation, data insights, and cash flow optimization game. Request a demo at tiesoftware.com. Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we are recapping the freight market for the year and also giving some hot takes for 2024. Don't forget to subscribe to the Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we have our absolute favorite crystal ball holder predictors, FreightWaves' very own Grace Sharkey and Thomas Wasson. Thank you guys for coming on the show again.
Hey, excited to see if we predicted right and if we'll predict right once again. And if so, I mean, talk about excellent forecasters, right, Thomas?
Oh, it's this is the year in review. This is like the equivalent of the Christmas party highlight reel for us.
Exactly. It's basically take a top 10 list and throw it into real time. So I do kind of like this tradition that we have of, going and seeing what we did right and wrong, and it's a nice little tradition. Because I did go back and watch the full episode from last year. I had a bow on my hair and a light up necklace and everything, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, and we weren't entirely wrong. Before we get too far into that, Grace, let's start with you. What is the most shocking news you heard about this year? Like, which one kind of made you go?
So like my initial response, just because of the beat I would cover, was gonna say convoy, but like, was that shocking? Maybe not so much. You know what? I would say some of these like pretty large carriers. I want to say Yellow, but like even some of the big truckload carriers that Clarissa had reported coming out of play, whether it was through bankruptcy or just shuttering their own doors. I think we all kind of expected a lot of clearly the owner operators just to struggle during these times, but to see some of these big ones like Meadowlark, right, and a few others like I think we all remember working with at some point in time too. And I mean, even technically you could say like US Express as well, and some of these other ones, which by the way, I saw a US Express truck last night in the wild, and that was fun to see. But I think that's what was surprising to me is Yellow is kind of its own situation. You probably could have called that soon, but some of the big ones, I was just like, wow, like you would think it was all these small ones that would fall out, but some of these like medium-sized to large ones that we have all known and worked with and provide great service fell out themselves. So I think that kind of surprised me a little.
Thomas, what about you? What was your biggest shocker for the year?
Well, my old alma mater, US Express, got bought out. I didn't know if it'd go out with a bang or a whimper. It sustained itself. Shout out to the teams and the folks who were, working hard and stuff. But at the same time, you don't expect one large one to go out with thousands of trucks. That was the first one. But it was an emotional roller coaster. We had Yellow, we had labor, we had the rail labor, we had automotive labor, we had some other labor for engine makers. There's a few more hanging out there somewhere. So it felt like an emotional roller coaster, and it kind of mimicked the spot rates in Yellow and their labor. So I think those were the two big takeaways for me. Was not only did the large carriers either quit, split, or get absorbed, but at the same time, the very labor that supported them was getting a little feisty this year.
Personally, I will say that I was surprised by Yellow, not because like I didn't know that they were going to go through bankruptcy. I'm just surprised that it finally happened, because I feel like they've been like the boy who cried wolf so many times. Like Yellow has been on the brink of bankruptcy from everything I've heard for like the last 10 years. So I was more like, how is this actually finally happening?
Well, they couldn't deliver it. I had to keep rescheduling their bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's so true. You're going to have to push that out another day.
I've set the terminal. We'll get back. We'll reschedule,
If that's not the most on-brand thing for Yellow.
And what's nice too is like at least we're getting our like government loan back. Like it's no like PPP fraud out of this one. It turns out we'll see. It sounds like the interest too, all of it will get back. So
We love someone that pays their bills. We love to see it. We love to see it. They should have spent less money on avocado toast. That's how they could have made it.
exactly, all of those office parties and the avocado toast and the better than Folgers coffee added up at the end of the day. So
It was the coffee nitro booth. I still get WeWork emails. I'm pretty sure they're out of business at this point, but they're still emailing me. I think the other funny one is those PPP loans. Like 60% of student loan borrowers have not repaid their stuff in mid-November, but at the same time, the government accidentally got a loan and made it pay back. So this is the balance is what's important.
I think the other thing that surprised me is honestly, it has to be all of the labor stories because I feel like once someone was like, oh no, like once one union was like, we're not doing this, we're doing our own thing, like we're going to strike, everybody was like, well, sure, shoot, I'll strike too. And it kind of, I'm glad that it kind of came back to, the workers standing up for what they want. And I mean, honestly, if I was part of a union that supported a company that had record years and billions of dollars of profits, I'd probably demand a few more things as well, especially if I was, an essential hero.
yeah, right, it's the essential part of it too. And yeah, it's they say whenever the auto workers UAW gets a raise, it trickles into pretty much every other part of America and other jobs as well. So checking my bank account, but no, just but still, I think it's positive news. Like there was some Craig was on some podcast and he said that it's crazy how we talk about like how resilient the carriers have been kind of throughout this whole thing, and now I think we're seeing the resiliency of just the American consumer. Like we will find a way to purchase something. We will find the money somewhere, whether it's underneath our couch or in gold bars now that you can buy from Costco or whatever way we can. But that might be like a bit of my hot take for next year. But still, it's I'm surprised by holiday spending. I'm surprised by the amount of debt that we have and what we're not paying on our credit cards or our student loans. But the amount of money Mattel will still make this holiday season is just like not adding up in my head.
Look, where there's a will, there's a way.
Where there's a buy, there's a way for sure.
All right, so we're going to switch from the shocking one to what was your favorite story of the year? Thomas, what was your favorite that you were like, oh, I like this one, or that it just stuck with you?
All stories are like children. They're all my favorites. But I mean, I think the biggest one, I wish I had Bill's list. There's like a whole list that we had because when you're in this industry, it can feel like sometimes your favorite one is the one that you just happen to remember last. I guess that can feel that way, but I guess my favorite stories, the biggest feel good ones. We had like one or two hurricanes this year. It wasn't a lot, but getting more attention to the folks who are out there delivering disaster relief. That's probably one of the big ones. The Christmas tree getting hauled. That's another fun one. And then finally, my favorite story of the year was Joanna Marsh's rail piece about how one of the rail companies is in trouble because grizzly bears get on the tracks and they ran over an unacceptable amount of grizzly bears. And so that one probably is my top story. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought you had the bear like the cow catchers, the bear catchers, but it is. And so that's just it's such a wild thing to think about. It reminds me why even in Russia, the cosmonauts have weapons because there's bears.
Unfortunately, I was gonna throw the grizzly bears article in there too. So, thanks for stealing that, Thomas. No, and it only because like I'm sure you deal with this, maybe Mary, but like in Michigan this time of the year, like these zombie deers who have somehow survived hunting season are just like they are just sitting in the sides of the roads waiting to leap out and destroy your car, and so for me it's like I love the grizzly bears, but stay away from the tracks, my dog. Like
it's not like it's not like you can't hear or like feel the vibrations of a train coming. Like if I'm a bear and the ground starts shaking, I'd probably be like, oh, I should move to where the ground's not shaking.
And I will say, it sounds like I had Mike on the radio show yesterday. We're talking about it, And part of the problem is that like we're just leaking corn and grain everywhere. So like we're almost like laying like a grizzly bear like
A
trap.
bear trap.
Yeah.
A
So
bear
it's like the
death
deer
trap.
are coming and then the deer gets smashed and then the bears are like, I smell raw meat and then it's just like so
It's a
it,
reverse food pyramid. It's
exactly.
like you
It
accidentally
really
make a.
is.
So is the train the apex predator?
But let me pick one outside of the grizzly bear situation. um, I think maybe it's not like the best story, but kind of to go back to like labor and like maybe exploring a little bit more of like behind these bankruptcies. I did enjoy a lot of our coverage on Yellow and what we did with the actual workers that worked at Yellow. I mean, it's sometimes the stories that we work on don't always hit mainstream media the same, and I think mainstream media touched on Yellow in some ways. I remember some relatives asking me about it shortly after, and people just kind of you know oh, big business goes out, big deal type of situation. And I think we did a really great job of at least covering the individuals that like they loved working there and they enjoyed their time there. And I mean, we all kind of laughed about it, but up until like the day that it was finally done, like how many of them were like, no, it's not done. We're not done. Like on Monday they'll announce that we're back. So I think it's not, I guess, heartwarming, but I love that we're able to, as a company, like portray all points of view of these things. And it's always, I think it was just really great to see, even though a company couldn't be run correctly by its leadership, that the workers behind it were like as loyal as they were.
Absolutely. I kind of I remember I like when you talk about that, I remember a viral video where someone was like shouting and saying like, I've worked here forever, like I have a pension here. And I think Dooner actually got him on his show. But just to see so many people that are like, no, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real, or like they just were kind of in disbelief, where the rest of us, we saw the writing on the wall and we knew that like the time had come. I mean, that's an insane testament to the culture that they had there of their employees, that even when everyone else was like, yeah, your company is going under, they were like, no, it's not. But yeah, I would say that one was pretty high up there. I actually really liked some of Rachel's stuff this year. Her trip up to Alaska was pretty cool. And then what was it? I really liked the one that I didn't think about until obviously Kingston wrote about it was with all the brokerages filing for bankruptcy, how carriers aren't necessarily going to be guaranteed to get paid. And like, having worked for a company that went through bankruptcy myself, kind of how payments are assigned and how that bankruptcy court goes. And, you don't get to pay who you want to pay. You are told who gets to pay. And then basically you have like your consultants, you have your lawyers, and then you have your high value, people, and then everyone else. And sometimes you get to pick 2 or 3 people that are important to you, especially for Chapter 11. When you're restructuring, you get to pick a couple, but that doesn't mean that the court's going to approve it. Every single dollar gets approved by the court. So it really just sucks that, the carriers that are maybe have $20,000 to $30,000 outstanding, that they might not get anything because they're not, high value enough. And that's a lot for someone to eat, especially when it's a lot to be desired for
Yeah,
margin.
definitely. It's a good point.
But back to last year. So it's time to review our hot freight takes. I like to call it, I just did this for myself on the Check Call newsletter. I like to call it a personal roast of how wrong I was. And I was pretty okay. Except I doubled down on ESG initiatives were going to be a big thing this year. As we all saw, they really weren't. So love that for us. But Grace, last year, your crystal ball predictions were brokers were investing in value added services such as integrations, building an infrastructure, creating dynamic and instant pricing. Okay. All right. That's pretty good. And you also said that people were going to be taking data and making it usable, kind of like getting a new CTO, new tech leaders, et cetera, et cetera. I think that was pretty on the mark.
Yeah, I would say so. Yes.
We saw maybe not as much tech advancement as we would have liked for it being a down year and budgets kind of, getting tightened, but there was still a hefty amount of it. So I'm going to call it a win. I'm gonna say your crystal ball was accurate.
I want to maybe deduct 20% off that win just because I, you're right. Like I think I didn't expect the market to be as hard on brokers for it. So they didn't. I'm sure there's a few that maybe invested in it and then are struggling to pay those bills now. So thanks for listening to me. Sorry. Uh, like yeah, the CTO guy's really working out. And so yeah, I think that's the only thing. Like I wish I would have thought of as well because considering the market, right? We should have put two and two together. I just don't think we thought it was going to be as bad, this time last year. So, whoops. But
Which honestly, I'm okay with the fact that we didn't think it was going to get worse because, that's nice. Um, Thomas, your quote, Colonel Sanders' spicy chicken sandwich predictions were that a large carrier was going to go out of business or be bought right when the market starts to turn. So that way, they've survived the down right when it starts to turn upwards. They're going to go out of business or be bought. And Grace, you actually also doubled down on this. So I'm going to give you like half credit because we did see a large carrier go. Well, actually, we saw two. We saw a large truck carrier and a large LTL carrier be bought and go out of business. However, we're missing that the market turned. So I'm going to give you like 75% credit.
It just kept getting worse. That's the funny part.
So I would say it's safe to say you guys kind of have you might need to clean your crystal balls for next year. The time has come, guys. I need you to make some predictions for 2024. Thomas, what you got?
Ooh, I got two. In the spirit of the Grizzly Bears that kept getting run over, the rails after they finish with the Bears will now hit the truckload carriers because intermodal's been sitting there, and the sidelines, and that's one of the big stories people are talking about. And I talked to somebody, and they're like, "Well, we're like at 95%, but we could be at like 110 to 115." And so I have a feeling the rails are about to go off the rails, and that's going to be one of the topics that's going to be worth watching. And it's going to be at the same time that for trucking, the second one, it's the big short. So all these lanes in the market, if you're a broker, you're locking in that dirty cheap rate and you're about to be underwater. So I'm like that Baum guy in the Big Short where you go to the housing thing and you knock on the guy's door and you're like, "Hey, did you know you've been doing this lane? It's about to be underwater." And they're like, "No, I've been paying my bills." And I pick up my phone and say, "They don't know, short everything." So that's the other one, which is we're going to see near the middle end of the year, as soon as this market turns, brokerage penetration is going to drop. They're going to lose market share compared to what they were enjoying with shippers because they're going to pop a parachute. They're not smart enough to diversify their margins and rips. And once it gets under, Rip City's going out of business.
I like that. I like that approach. Grace, what about you for your hot take for 2024?
I do love Thomas's move bears get out the way intermodal suggestion. So I do want to back that one up because I agree. I mean, but here's why I want to back that one up. And it's actually piggybacking off of your bad prediction from last year, which is ESG initiatives. Intermodal. I mean, it's one of the easiest ways to cut some of your emissions out of your supply chain, and I think we have, of course, carb enforcement starting here in less than whenever this airs, 10 days. You have a number of these like by 2030 rules, and by 2025 we want to do all these things, and I think people are underestimating like how long it's going to take for them to truly get their whole supply chain compliant to that. So where it might not be, I think like we'll see more technology maybe coming out exploring that the scope 3 emissions, right? We saw a little bit of it like last year, and I think or like 2 years ago, and I think that's probably why you suggested this year would be big. But then think just people were struggling with the economy, where it was like, who cares about where our emissions are right now? We've got to focus on this. But I think as we start to come back and people and a lot of these deadlines get closer and people realize like, oh, I my carriers need to be compliant to this, right? Like there's going to be a lot of auditing that goes into your supply chain, and the easiest way to get that done is to add, I think, some type of technology to that. So that's where I kind of focus that ESG on. Also, the intermodal side, the quantum service that is coming from JB, the BNSF and JB combination, which was pretty much there to begin with, but being more out front about it showcases like, hey, we're gonna really help our customers leverage this mode. And even I think with the shutdown we saw this past week over on the border and how big of a deal that is, I think showcases like, no, our supply chains are going to really focus a little bit more time on how to leverage that mode better. And I think retailers and CPG companies have really invested the last couple of years in technology to watch their inventory needs, that they can now afford the few extra days that that mode will take for the payoffs that might come with the emissions too. So ESG, I think, is and I hope I eat these words this time next year. But it was funny when you said that. I was like, yikes! Here we go. Here's mine. I also, and maybe like this is like the fun part, I think that we're gonna see a big broker struggle or fallout of the market. um and and maybe it'll be in like an exit type of situation. Maybe it gets bought up, or we see like a big play by maybe like an equity group to kind of like save them from it. But I think, I mean, if you've been in brokerage, Mary, you know, and Thomas as well, like when the market does start to creep back, your brokers are going to be in that situation where they're going to have to pay carriers very competitively while their shippers are still enjoying their 90-day payment terms or more. And if you don't have your funds in play, which by the way, we're still in a market where those rates for lines of credit aren't cheap. Like it's, you could really quickly overexpose yourself in some way. And where we saw maybe Surge struggle with that this past year, I wouldn't be surprised if we see someone a little bit larger struggle with that too. So
I think next year is going to be big on rail. I mean, we've seen huge money come from the government to update the rail infrastructure, which it's about time. And then I think it's going to be a fundamental difference for freight payment. And I think it's going to be a big year for freight payment and like freight factoring and everything like that, because it's already getting hot. I think it's going to, I think that that's my spicy take, is that there will be major changes to freight factoring and freight payment throughout the year, which is weird because it's usually something that everybody just forgets about. Like not forgets about, but like doesn't pay attention to. So there's two more questions, specifically one for you, Grace. Grace, it's been a year. Have you watched Die Hard yet?
no, when I saw the question on the list, and I was like, I should watch it tonight, and I had to take a medication that put me to sleep too early, and then I didn't, and so no, I haven't watched Die Hard.
That's okay. That's okay. At this point, I'm just going to keep asking you every year, and maybe like a monthly question on Twitter until you watch it. And then maybe I'll just get enough people to bully you into watching it.
Maybe I'll. Okay, no, I'll. I'll truly work on it.
2 words,
You
Alan Rickman.
Yeah, Alan Rick. Yeah, I know. You're right.
That was like his first breakout role. You gotta watch it. It's so good.
It's a Christmas movie, right? Like,
According, Bruce Willis has come out and said it's not a Christmas movie, and to me, it's a movie that happens to take place at Christmas time. But if you took Christmas out of it, like it would still be a movie.
I'm looking at it from American culture standpoint. It's violent and it has a Christmas tree, therefore it is a Christmas movie.
yeah, and I do love all those actors. Maybe I'll try to fit it in. We'll see.
Until then, I look forward to the when you do start it and we get a live tweet about it. So
Yes, exactly.
that would be fantastic. All right, so we already know where you guys stand on a lot of things. Thomas, if you could only eat one color of food for the rest of your life, what color would it be?
Brown, because I can overcook my steak and my French fries and everything else.
So that is the one of the most popular answers, but it's the most unhealthy answer because you can have everything deep fried and like chocolate cake and other stuff like that. Grace, what's your color?
The first thing that came to mind was orange, like orange chicken, cheese, just smother everything in cheese. Um, That's like carrots. I love carrots. I love orange. I'm like really into oranges right now. Like I've just been destroying oranges like no other. Big vitamin C gal. I love orange juice. I love I love the orange Panera Death lemonade. I love so many things orange. So that's a when he said brown, I was like gross. But then the meat side started to make sense. But I'm more of a chicken gal, so I'll just like dip it in, like make orange chicken constantly, and then I'll survive.
You're sweat. So, if anyone wants to reach out to you guys about either of your shows or anything you work on, or maybe if they want to know what else is in that crystal ball of yours, where can they find you outside the show? Thomas, why don't you start us?
FreightWaves.com/loaded and rolling. Check it out. Wherever you may find your podcasts and other stuff.
Oh man, where can you find me? Honestly, I hate saying it, but just like Google me, find my
Honestly,
link tree.
no. The better question is where can't you find Grace?
Yeah, exactly. If you find my Twitter or LinkedIn, you'll see my link tree, which like goes to all of our shows and stuff. But I would highly suggest just go to our YouTube page again, like and subscribe to that. Leave comments. Let us know what content you like, what you don't, what you'd like to see more of. You can find me on Great Quarter Gals. You can find me on the radio every day, Monday through Friday. Next year, I think we're going to get a little creative with some partnerships in that too. So that should be fun. But yeah, go check out my writing. I forgot I write too. There we go. That's a thing. So you can if you go freightwaves.com/ I think honestly Grace Sharkey, you'll see all those articles there too. So yeah.
Find Check All the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts, such as Loaded and Rolling and Great Quarter Gals. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/check. See you on the internet.